And the other rule we have is never to host events before Australia Day, which marks the end of the Australian summer. That would be like hosting an event in Seattle or New York in August. But this year we've made an exception to that rule because we have the opportunity to host a very significant figure, Mr. Bill Gates. Today, Bill Gates and I will sit down for a conversation about preparing for the challenges the world faces, including pandemics, climate change, food security, and other topics of the day. Well, welcome, Bill. First of all, what brings you to Australia?
Mostly vacation. I was up at Lizard Island for about 5 days, here in Sydney for 5 days, and then I'll on Wednesday go down and see the last 5 days of the Australian Open in Melbourne.
Let me start with some of the global health issues. Let me start with COVID. I always felt that COVID was like an X-ray of societies in the sense that it revealed the strengths and weaknesses, it revealed the frailties of societies. In your country, I think it's fair to say that COVID exposed many political and institutional frailties and inequalities. You look at a country like China, for example, on the other hand, they had a completely different strategy for dealing with COVID, but they probably held on to COVID zero for too long. They did a lot to strangle economic growth and, of course, limit the civil liberties of Chinese people. It's very hard to make policies towards a pandemic in the middle of it, but when analysts look back on the pandemic in 20 years' time, which countries do you think they will say got it right? Who got the balance right? What are the lessons we should learn from how our different countries approached this dreadful disease?
I would say any country got it totally right. Some of the things that would stand out would be that Australia and about 7 other countries did population scale diagnostics early on and had quarantine policies associated with that meant that you kept in that first year when there were no vaccines. Hospitals could have gotten overloaded like they did in many countries. You kept the level of infection low. So at the end of the day, the Australian death rate per capita will be about 12% of most rich countries, including the United States. And it's that first 90 days where the US did not scale up diagnosis and quarantine. So that's definitely a best practice that in the future, countries need to have dedicated personnel. They need to practice how they connect up with in this case, the PCR diagnostic industry was the magic there. We're going to have even better diagnostics that are cheap and that we can manufacture in the billions very quickly for the next time. So for example, China, where we'll never know the true death numbers. Sadly, epidemics come along so rarely. Epidemics, hopefully this will get us to take them seriously, at least for the next 20 or 30 years. Well, the WHO was so mistreated by the US and other member countries that it's very hard to do your job when your largest donor is completely withdrawing in the middle of an epidemic. The WHO is going to need more resources to have a dedicated team, not just for when the epidemic comes, but to go to the world's countries and make sure that these drills are being done. And so we need to be doing every 5 years a really comprehensive exercise at both country and regional level of pandemic preparedness. And you need a global group that's kind of scoring everybody and saying, hey, if you're not participating in this, you could be the source of the next pandemic. And that's bad for the entire world.
And Bill published this fabulous book, Bill Gates, How to Prevent the Next Pandemic, which has a whole bunch of innovative ideas about the lessons the world can learn. Some countries did well at suppression of the vaccine, but on the other hand, we had polarization, vaccine nationalism, inequality.
Some of the tools of biology could actually be used by a bioterrorist, which generally these are diseases of animals, zoonoses, that come across and infect humans. In this case, a bat virus. It's one of the 4 big families of viruses that we know its receptors can change so that they attach to the human lung and become human respiratory disease. And that's the main thing to worry about is respiratory disease, because you get very fast human-to-human spread, all of which we need to have standby tools, both antivirals and vaccines, that can deal with those. It's very doable. So on the tools front, we can be far more prepared. The reason pandemics are so scary right now is that human travel is so pervasive. People need to say, WHO is a very, very critical asset. And so if you want to criticize it, fine, then, get them more resources, get them good people, get them an even better personnel system. The reason that climate change is worth investing in massively is because it will get worse and worse over time. The development goals are, the UN set goals for 2030, so-called Sustainable Development Goals. We won't achieve those goals. So Australia is rare in that the opportunities exceed the things you have to give up. You have to give up a large part of and eventually almost all of the coal mining activity. What happens with beef, my climate group, Breakthrough Energy, just announced literally today an investment in an Australian group called Ruminate that helps cows not be so much a source of methane emissions. So we have 2 paths to solving that. That's 6% of global emissions are cows who burp and fart methane to an extreme degree. You can either fix the cows to stop them doing that, or you can make beef without the cow. And both of those, will be pursued to see which one can lead to the best product in terms of taste, health, and cost. The Ukrainian government is one of the worst in the world. Corrupt, controlled by a few rich people. I mean, really unfortunate for the people in Ukraine. The current world system is designed around U.S. leadership. And as other countries have gotten richer, these middle-income countries, including China and India, need to play a stronger role in world governance. The fact that's been taken, where you can kind of just find people who believe QAnon and sit there all day long and be told how right you are, and not pulled out of that. That is definitely, one of the 4 or 5 problems I put into the, next generation must figure this one out bucket. But, I tend to see China's rise as a huge win for the world. We're all in this together. So, I'm very aligned with Kevin Rudd on this. We think we can also have very early in an epidemic a thing you can inhale that will mean that you can't be infected, a blocker, an inhaled blocker. We also need to fix the 3 problems with vaccines. The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection, and they have very short duration.
Bill Gates, I want to thank you for a very thoughtful and stimulating conversation. I think, ladies and gentlemen, you can sense Mr. Gates's energy, his restless intelligence, his ambition to do good in the world. I want to congratulate you on the work of your foundation. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Australia. I'm not sure if you're going to get to the tennis, but I know your first love remains pickleball. So thank you very much, Bill Gates. Please join me in thanking you.